Um, well, Coach, we love to transition now into a game. This has been great, by the way. Thank you so far.
Yes.
This has been really fun. We like to transition into a segment we call Start, Sub, or Sit. And for those that maybe are listening for the first time, we're going to give you three basketball-ish topics and ask you to start one, sub one, and sit one. So, Coach, if you're ready, we can dive right in here.
Yeah, I've heard my share of these, so I'm excited to see what you got in store for us.
Yeah, okay. Well, Coach, we're gonna start with I guess a little bit of an off the floor question for you. So, we want to ask you start, sub, sit. These are different coaching attires for the sideline that coaching staffs can wear, and your preference here. So, start, sub, or sit: the shirt and tie or the suit, the comfortable polo, just a polo and slacks, or maybe a pullover sweater or sweatshirt on the sideline.
Oh, so I'm gonna sit the suit. I know that there is some. I know that there's some. Dissenting opinions on whether or not we should be wearing suits, but I feel like we're basketball coaches, and it's not quite that serious. But I would start the polo. I thought last year was ideal with everyone kind of sliding. I hope that it sticks around.
Yes.
So polo, I think is the appropriate attire for coaching basketball, and then the sweater pullover. I guess I would go next.
You would sub that one, yeah.
Is the sweater
keep
pullover?
It comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Is the sweater pullover an age-driven thing?
It might be. I don't know. I've never worn one. I'm just like ranking them in order of casualness. But we may need an alternative to the age-appropriate pullover.
Yeah. Well, Pat and I were talking beforehand, trying to figure out, maybe a third or fourth one here. And we don't know if maybe the coaching turtleneck will catch on, like a thick turtleneck would be good.
Like a Bob Huggins. I mean, honestly, if everyone's just wearing what Bob Huggins is wearing, like, I think we're all happier.
Yeah. No.
Well, moving away from fashion, Coach, our next start, sub, sit is how you like to use the gravity of a shooter. I think we've touched on a little bit of all of them throughout, but we're going to now make you choose. So using the gravity of the shooter, using him, spacing him, cutting him, or having him be a screener.
Those guys, shooting is so valuable, right? And we really try to have as much of it on the floor as we can. I would start spacing them. I think that provides you the most flexibility, and it just allows, it's kind of a necessity. You need that one, I think, before everything else kind of falls into place. The next one I would go with using them as a screener, and then probably third is the cutter. I think as a screener, you're doing a little more to get somebody else open and create some advantage there, maybe another scoring opportunity for someone else or yourself. And then as a cutter, I think you're maybe limiting that person's strength a little bit, depending on who they are.
Okay. With the screening actions, any screens you prefer one over the other when you're with a shooter?
Yeah, I mean, we would try to typically get something for a bigger player going to the rim, shooter either kind of popping from there or getting kind of that second screener action. But I think if you can, bigger player going to the rim is harder to switch. Really, it's hard to, even if you're trying to do it in your preparation of like, just let that guy go. I think it's hard for defenders to just let people go on, wide open to the rim. So they react a little differently. So big guys headed to the basket is our typical version of screening for our shooters.
When two guards are coming into a screening action, would you prefer the shooter receives the screen or the shooter sets the screen?
Mostly receives. I think that puts the most pressure on the defense in terms of what they have to do or want to do. Yeah, I would say shooter receiving.
Yeah, and Coach, just my quick follow-up on this, because when we were talking about this question, it was kind of under the umbrella of like, if you're designing a set, like a specific set, maybe to get someone else the ball and you just want to use the shooter as a decoy, kind of how you think about either spacing them, using them as screeners or cutting. And I guess because we both were thinking about the cutting, how you might use that, the gravity of a great shooter, kind of burn cutting or cutting in some way to clear out a space. I know you sat it, but are there any instances where you maybe see that cutting a great shooter would lead to something advantageous in a set?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you think about the action a little bit more completely, I mean, I was thinking of just like the specific cut, but what we do a fair amount is we have those guys cut, and then we kind of described it a few minutes ago, but when they cut and then they finish on the other side, there might be another action there where where they're having to move, right? It's just kind of like making them move, having that defender be, again, keeping pressure on them. When you take them away from the action, and maybe you have a ball screen behind where they just left, as a defender, okay, I have shooter and my responsibility is to really chase that guy. Yeah. Okay. So now he's going to clear the space and maybe you're going to get a roll layup out of the ball screen because you're just straight blindly chasing shooter to the corner. And then, but trying to have that next thing for them, I think really adds a lot of value. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Coach, our next start, sub, or sit. And this is about when another team has a great full court on ball defender and just a pesky full court defender bothering your point guard, and 3 different types of actions you can do to just get the ball past half court against this great defender. So start, sub, or sit, just clearing everybody out and giving them the whole back court to have room to make space to go by. Stopping maybe someone, one of your bigs around half court and setting like a flat ball screen so they can kind of use the ball screen in the back court, or just throwing it back to your trail or your inbounder and getting your point guard out and not even bothering with that defender and entering your offense from the trail man.
I guess it would depend a little on my point guard and how much we kind of depended on that person. But if they weren't kind of your driver of everything offensively and you had to have the ball in their hands, then I'm going to start just giving the ball to someone else and just kind of taking that guy away. We're pretty fluid in how we can enter our offense. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that point guard, and we would be fine just kind of getting going, and we could run just about everything with someone else. So I would start that. If you have, maybe that's a guy like you really don't want to just take the ball out of his hands because he's, your key guy, then I would probably sub that like really high flat ball screen and then use it as an opportunity to get him into space. Like if we set a good one, now our best player theoretically is into space and we're just going to attack right away and kind of go from there. We would just kind of go right into offense, see if we can't get them downhill and play right away from there. And then the last one would be just leave him one-on-one against the great defender in the backcourt. Like, I feel like that's just playing to their strength. If that guy, wearing our guard down, that's a lot of work for those guys who got to bring the ball up the floor and versus that kind of pressure all the time. So I would sit that one and try to avoid it if we could.
A quick little tangent, Coach, hearing you talk about setting that flat screen and kind of creating the early advantage. Where do you fall on if teams are pressuring you? Where do you fall on how aggressive you want your offense to be in terms of, let's try to take that first advantage and punish them versus let's beat it, slow it up, and now get into our stuff?
I would say we were going to fall on the more aggressive side of that. We're going to try to be a team that's hard to press. We try to, like, if teams press us, we try to put shooting on the back end of it. If we can get, 2 guys kind of on the back end of the press, try and break the press with 3. And now you got kind of one guy responsible for both corners at the back end. Like we're trying to shoot a 3 on the back end of that. So, I mean, when we put in press offense to start the season, we kind of start with, hey, we're going to try and shoot 3s at the back, like if we get pressed. So be prepared for that. If there's a lot of ball pressure like that, then I think if the team's pressuring you that way and you try to like slow down and execute too much, you're playing right into their hands a little bit. I mean, obviously maybe you got like a little action where you can get them on a back door, make them pay for some things. But, I want our guys kind of going back to the beginning where we we want to create some freedom for them and trust our players. Like I want them to, not be limited in their aggressiveness versus pressure. Guys, we can't let guys guard the ball at 45 feet and not just go by them. You have to try to go by them and make plays. And so that would be our approach. We would definitely be more aggressive versus that scenario.
Coach, do you feel like the paradigm has shifted in terms of why teams press? Because I'm with you. I feel teams, they press, and if you slow it up, that's kind of playing. They want that. That means they can be aggressive and get away with it. Where I think too, though, coming up, people also said like, well, if they press and you play fast, you're playing into their tempo and taking quick shots. That's what they want. I think it's a very interesting concept. Do you feel like it's shifting more towards like slowing it up is working into their hands than playing fast?
Yeah, I definitely think that. And I think a lot of that is right. The whole, you're going to play too fast and take quick shots. Some of that is kind of what we think a good shot is now, right? Like the analytics of a good shot and what we're okay with, if we get a good look at a three from the right guys, then we'll shoot that with 28 on the clock. You know what I mean? Like we want that going up every time. I think it's just a byproduct of getting quality shots is very difficult. And so if they're going to extend their defense to guard 94 feet and you have an opportunity to get a quality shot, outside of just like time, score, late game situation, I think you just can't pass up good shots. I can't tell you how many times I've watched them film with guys and they aren't ready to shoot or pass up a good shot. And then we'll say like, okay, well, that was an opportunity to score. You weren't ready to shoot it. Let's see what we get on this possession. And it is almost always something bad. It's a turnover. It's a bad shot. It's that was our chance to score and you didn't shoot it, so we want to be aggressive shooting the basketball. And I think that that's not unique to us. And I think that's kind of a byproduct of people's approach to press offense and press attacks.
Coach, my last follow-up here on this is with pressure. If you're playing a team that on every made basket is pressuring up, whether it's maybe a man pressure or maybe a zone, kind of a trap, I feel like there's kind of two schools of thought of either take it out quick and get it in and try to beat the pressure before they're set, or let maybe the ball bounce, slow it, set up your press breaker, get guys to spots so you're able to handle any sort of trap. Where do you sort of fall within that of how quickly you would take it out against a pressing team?
We would try to kind of get a little bit of both in. Basically, if we can quickly get it in to the right person, we would go ahead and take advantage of that. If that's not available to us, then we would, maybe slow down and make sure we get the ball in the hands of the right people. So I think it's just about getting the ball where you want it with who you want it to be with. And the sooner you can do that, the better.
Okay, Coach, our last start sub sit for you. Start sub or sit, like tough to teach or bad habits to change from your players. So teaching them not to foul, teaching shot selection, or teaching cutting players who stand too much.
Okay. And this is what's the hardest thing?
Yeah. What would be the hardest for you to as a coach?
I would say for us, the toughest, I don't know if it's the toughest, but it's something we probably put the most time in is shot selection, right? And really trying to teach them what shots we want them to take, why, how to find them. Like we spend a lot of time with guys on shot selection, right? Like that's great that you can create your own shot and take a tough off three dribble, off the dribble three. But, if it's 22 on the shot clock, maybe that's not the right one. It's like, so trying to get them to understand like when, not just what shots to take, but when to take them and all that stuff. I think that's probably number one on that list, or at least we spend the most time on it. And then I would say cutting next, because I think there's definitely a nuance to cutting, and there's a little bit of like guys kind of either have it or they don't. Some of that. Yeah. Like I think that there's just a feel to when to cut, when how to get yourself open, the timing of those things. Like some guys just have a knack for that. And I feel like that's something that is, you can teach them when to do it, but like the guys who are really good at it, I don't know that you're teaching them to be that good at it. They just kind of have that knack for it. And then the third one, I guess, would be not fouling. I think that's something, technique wise, scheme a little bit, you can really help them out with, in terms of, matchups, things like that, where you can control a little more.
Coach, my first follow-up is just with the shot selection. I'm curious to hear, under 10 seconds on the shot clock, what's a shot you want? Or what's a shot that, hey, we can get a better one, maybe?
Under 10, I think we're going to be pretty aggressive when we get under 10. So then I think a lot of times we're really talking about maybe who has the ball more than the shot they're going to, right? Like late clock is about who do we want to be the person who's going to try to bail us out of these possessions? Based on skill set matchup, it might not be the same every time, but we've had, different what the defense is doing. So we kind of take all of that into, and so like the end of the clock is just, hey, it didn't work, clearly it didn't work. The hard part is finding the balance between staying in the flow and just continuing to try to create shot out of that possession, or disrupting that a little bit to play through a certain player. And again, that's something that we might change a little bit night to night based on what the defense is doing and things like that. But yeah, that's always a little bit of a tougher decision.
So kind of quickly staying on that thread. And when you say game to game, is it like you'll kind of, these are some matchups we like or in our favor? So if it is under 10 and it ends up here, we'll stop and we'll let them go to work? Or is it if the ball finds your certain better players under 10, it's like, hey, let's then kind of stop and let him go to work?
So our kind of default is trying to get them to understand, like if it lands on certain guys late, we might stop there's a little bit of slow down. Let's let it stay with that guy so he can try to bail us out. But then in terms of like night to night, like we had an example where, teams switching the ball screen and they have a big but they switch anyway because our guard maybe struggled to create on his own. So you can have like a real, 6'10" guy guarding our guard and we're not really able to create. So then in a different situation, so like we play them again, we might change who we want to have it at the end, or who gets maybe the last ball screen versus switch and is the one who's going to have to attack that switch because this guy shoots it better and we're going to bring that big out further and we got a better chance to create some offense because he can't just sag. So that would be kind of a minor adjustment of, typically we're going to go with this guy late in the clock because he's got the most juice off the bounce. But in this specific situation, we would maybe lean in a different direction just based on what the other team is doing. Okay.
Coach, my follow-up is with the cutting again. And you mentioned that kind of something that some guys have a knack and some guys don't. I'm interested in the guys that don't have the knack and how you still use them in the offense to either create space or just, do you give them rules? Just saying, okay, well, they don't have the knack, so I'm just going to tell you the ball's here, you're cutting, so you create space? Or how do you teach the guys that don't have the knack?
Yeah. So those guys they pretty much are just going to stick with the cuts that are built in. They rarely kind of go outside of that, or just like, hey, my guy's not paying attention. Here's a cut, ball's coming at me, I'm going to back cut kind of thing. But we have the built right. We have the, burn the stunt cut that's built in. We kind of talked about that empty side ball screen. If that gets rejected and driven baseline, we cut that 45. If that comes to the middle, that 45 cut actually turns into pin down. So like those are kind of built ins where we want them to see it coming and know like, okay, I'm the cutter in this action, and at least like get it right that they did cut. But we're going to score less when they're the cutter on that baseline drive in the 45 because they're going to, the angle isn't right, or they were late or early, or, whereas just some guys have just such a good feel for getting into that space at the right time and putting them in position for easy baskets.
Okay.
Coach, do you run into with these built-in cuts that, you want the guy making the cut, but maybe it's not a great finisher? Do you run into the fact that, hey, don't send him that pass because you're putting him in a tough spot where he can't finish? Just let him make the cut and then let's continue.
Yeah, that happens occasionally. What a better solution for that for us would be some of that self-awareness we talked about with our guys. So if you're an undersized guard and you can really shoot it, and I'm 6'8", athletic, really good cutter, and you're in the 45 and we see it coming, and you and I can change spots before the action happens. And now we're again back to positions of strength. If you recognize what's coming and I recognize what's coming and we kind of like look at each other and switch spots, then now I'm going to basically take that cut for you and you're going to be spacing the floor. So if I don't get it and we go one more, it can land on you for a jump shot as opposed to me. So 2 years ago, our last Division II year, we had a really, really experienced team and they would do things like that. And we sometimes we wouldn't even see it till we're watching film, but of guys coming down in transition and like changing spots because they know where the ball's going to go and they're playing with so much anticipation that they're able to get each other in positions of strength. And, so again, that just meant there wasn't a lot for me to do during those games, but it was a lot of fun to be on a team like that.
For sure. Well, Coach, you're off the start sub sit hot seat. I'm glad we weren't all wearing shirt and ties for that.